Hello, we're going to move into week 11 and cover the basic concept number 3, the social and economic outlook for an aging society, covering pages 297 to 329 in your book. The issues about the diversity of our aging population, the role of our government, and the future of work and retirement all are colliding in this chapter to present the topic of what does the outlook look like? Where are we going with all of this? So we've talked about some of the physical and cognitive challenges that face older adults, but we also have economic and social factors that affect older adults. So if you remember back to week 1, and we talked about the life course perspective on aging, and that is related to all of the experiences and the decisions that we make in our life and the characteristics of our life all come together to influence our aging experience. But there are other factors, or there are factors within that life course that also affect our aging experience. One of them we've talked about briefly, and that's ageism. And the fact that as a society, we essentially don't have defined roles for our older adults. Moody and Sasser ask, why is it as a society do we encourage older people to withdraw from productive roles after a certain age? And while some older adults might see retirement as being freeing and liberating and a time to explore new opportunities in life, there are other older adults that see it as a tremendous loss. The loss of your work role, the loss of being a parent or parenting your children, the loss that you might experience from leaving a significant role within your community. So ageism, and if you also think back to previous chapters where we talked about this idea of age differentiation, which is, well, when you get to be 65, you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. You're not supposed to go back to college. You're not really supposed to be working. You're not supposed to be doing certain things at certain ages. So ageism and age differentiation, that conspires to affect our viewpoint of growing old and starting this third chapter of our life. Another aspect is this concept of cumulative disadvantage or double jeopardy, and that is related to your social class. So if you are a lower economic status individual, you are more likely to have a negative aging experience than somebody at a higher socioeconomic level, because a lower person with a person in lower SES has not had the type of opportunities that people in other economic realms have had. Gender plays a role in aging disadvantage. Women have tended to earn less money than men over their life course. So women tend to have less financial security in their older years and need to rely on their husbands for their financial wherewithal and their financial well-being. Well, I have seen many situations happen just in my personal life where the woman outlives the man, or the spouse, I should say, which is very typical. Women tend to outlive men, and if the male has been the primary wage earner, because of the death of the male, then the pension benefits are cut back, leaving the spouse, the female spouse, in a more jeopardized economic position. So women tend to be more disadvantaged than men in their older years. And then race also plays a part, in ethnicity, due to the cumulative disadvantage of discrimination in all its shapes and forms. So we not only have the physical challenges and the cognitive challenges, we have the social challenges of social class, gender, and ethnicity and race. And your assignment for this week is to write an essay that talks about how these issues can come together to affect the aging experience. Another area that affects older adults is their sources of income. Now, cumulative disadvantage obviously ties directly into somebody's income. But sources of income for older adults lie primarily in three areas. Social Security, which is the government form of a pension. You pay into Social Security throughout your lifetime. It's called a pay-as-you-go system. You're paying. You're paying into Social Security if you're working. And then when you retire at age 65, you begin to collect your benefits. So that is one source of income for older adults, and it happens to be the source of income that has been able to propel many older adults out of a state of poverty. In other words, without Social Security, they would be highly impoverished people. Second form of income for seniors are their pensions or their retirement funds. So they're defined pension plans from the employer where they used to work, or a retirement income from a 401k plan can produce income for older adults. And then their own personal savings accounts. So those are three main sources of income. So if you have been disadvantaged most of your life by your gender, by your race, and your social class, your Social Security income is not going to be at the same level as somebody at a higher socioeconomic level, somebody who paid in more to the system. The more you pay into the system, the more you get out of the system. The less you pay in, the less you get. So if you worked for a company that had no ability to offer you a retirement plan or contribute to your retirement plan, your pension or your retirement income is going to be lower. And then obviously your personal savings is also going to be lower if you have been disadvantaged throughout your life. So income is another critical social factor that influences the experience of aging. So while the assumption seems to be that all older people are very much alike, that they're all going to retire at 65, they're all going to live a comfy, cozy life, they're all going to retire in their dream home or their dream community. The fact of the matter is that our aging society is an extremely diverse aging society. And there are people that are considered to be ill elderly and well elderly. So the ill elderly are people who are not living a fruitful, meaningful life in their aging years. They're living a life of disadvantage. Well elderly are people who have the financial wherewithal to live a very comfortable life. So cumulative disadvantage and double jeopardy can affect the financial security in older age, and being a member of multiple groups just compounds the issues of whether you're going to end up being an ill elderly or a well elderly. I want you to understand the difference between income and wealth, because when we look at the net worth of older adults today, we see that they have some accumulated worth. However, some of that worth is tied up into the home that they live in. So they may have purchased their home 50 years ago and they paid $25,000 for that home, and today they can sell that house for $300,000 or $400,000. So they have they have wealth. They have accumulated wealth in their home, but the only way to access that wealth is by selling their home. So there's wealth in terms of the resources that you've collected over your lifetime. But then there's income. And so the income is what you're bringing in each month. And when you stop working and you stop getting a paycheck, the question comes in, where does that income derive from? Where is that going to come from? You can't survive if you are going to have to dip into your wealth. In other words, sell your home, liquidate those assets, and then live off of the proceeds of the sale of that home. You're eventually going to run out of that money. You're going to eventually spend it on your needs. So we need both. We need wealth and we need income. So the way that income affects our well-being in our older years is very, very significant. And sadly, not enough people have paid attention to that reality, that we not only need to have the wealth accumulated, we need to have access to that wealth, and we need to have the income to continue to feed that wealth as well. So that financial planning aspect of growing older is one that many people have not taken into consideration. But the good news is that on page 323, our government, one of the things I suppose that they've really done very well, beginning back in the 1930s, is we have put social programs in place from a government perspective that have helped older adults move out of a state of poverty and into a state of financial security. Those programs are listed on page 323, but I want to point out to you a couple of the most significant progress that we've made in our country related to preparing for our older years. First of all, in 1935, the Social Security Act was enacted, and that created the government pension program for older adults. And that program has resulted in providing an income for older adults who most likely would have had little to no income coming in. So Social Security has been a key factor in helping to elevate older adults out of poverty. Then the next, what came in 1965 when Medicare was established, and Medicaid. I want you to understand the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is the government health insurance program. When you turn 65, you go on to Medicare because, again, most likely you're not working anymore and you won't have health insurance through your employer. So Medicare provides that health insurance for you. You're still paying premiums, but you're getting health insurance. That happened in 1965, and it has improved the health status and the access to health care for older adults since the beginning of that program. The other program that was really key came in 1984, and that was the Retirement Equity Act. And that is when our country eliminated the mandatory retirement age. At one time in our country, it was mandatory that people retire at the age of 65. Well, in 1984, we made that illegal. You cannot force people to retire from their work simply based on their age. So that has allowed people to continue to work and to continue to generate that income and that wealth that we know is so important for a successful aging experience. One of the reasons that these programs were put into place is essentially because we started to recognize as a nation that we're having longer lives. People are living longer. And back in the colonial days, when average life expectancy was in the 40s, you weren't expected to live that long. We really didn't have to worry about people living to the age of 80, 90, even 100 years old. Well, now that that is a stark reality, that we're having people living so much longer, we've had to put programs in place to protect people from falling into poverty in their older years. So I want to also cover this issue of then, what is the role of the government going to be for all of these older people? How much are we going to be able to depend on our government to support people living to be 100 years old? So when you think about it for a minute, it is conceivable that people could live almost as long in retirement as they did in their working years. So if you have somebody that lives to be 105 and they stopped working at the age of 65, they worked maybe 35, 40 years. Well, if somebody lives to be 100 and they retired at 65, they could live another 35 years, not generating any income for themselves and blowing through their wealth. So the question comes in, what is it that we need to change? What do we need to, how are we going to afford to support all of these older baby boomers? So there is a debate going on about whether or not Social Security should become a need-based benefit or a means-tested benefit. So your Social Security is not going to depend upon how much you put in. It's going to depend upon how much you accumulated, how much wealth you've accumulated, and how much sources of other income you have accumulated in your life. So that if somebody's accumulated a lot of wealth and has a lot of income generated from personal savings or from retirement accounts, maybe they don't need as much Social Security, and maybe that Social Security should go to more impoverished people. Maybe the people who didn't have the kind of advantages that other people have had in life, maybe their Social Security provision should be higher than those that truly don't need it. And I think that's an extremely valuable argument and discussion to have, is should it be means tested? The other debate is related to who should fund Social Security. So I mentioned before that it's a pay-as-you-go system. So you're now paying in to the system, but you are actually paying in to support the people who are retired now. And your contributions or your access into Social Security is actually going to come from the workforce behind you. So you're starting to build your own Social Security nest egg, and that part of what you contribute today will go to your benefits, and then part of what you are contributing today goes to current beneficiaries. So the question has come up, should we have a system of generational equity, meaning baby boomers fund their own Social Security, millennials fund their own Social Security, Generation X funds their own Social Security, and we drop the system of what we have called generational interdependence, where one generation is dependent on another generation for Social Security benefits. And there are arguments on both sides of that coin as well. So you'll read about that in this chapter too. And we will have a discussion board on this where we sort of debate, what do you think about generational equity versus generational interdependence? So there are a lot of issues that we still need to address in our country related to how we're going to care for our older adults. And one of the things that I want you to really take away from this chapter reading is that, number one, our older adults are a very diverse group of people. And we can't just bucket everybody into one category, and that there are many negative impacts to this issue of cumulative disadvantage. People who have had a cumulative disadvantage effects in their life have reduced access to preventative health care. They have reduced resources for healthy and good nutritious food. They have reduced access to education programs. There's a lack of family caregiving network because of the fact that people need to work, as well as language barriers. So one of the things in your Week 11 folder is a video that talks about the language barriers that we're going to be facing with older adults on top of the issue of dementia. So how are we going to take care of older adults who don't have the language skills to really understand what's happening and to seek the type of medical care that they might need, on top of possibly having dementia? So we have multiple layers of issues that are going to begin to unfold as our society becomes older and older. I believe that, yes, this is what I wanted to cover for Week 11. So you know how to reach me. I hope you have a good week and take care. Bye.